Hello, and welcome back to It's a Very Exciting Time, a podcast by a UFO nerd and his tolerant friend. My name is Scott, and I've been fascinated by the phenomenon my whole life.
And I'm Chuck. I'm an aerospace nerd and a tolerant friend.
We started this podcast because since 2017, there have been shocking revelations, from news of secret Pentagon programs to confirmed videos of astonishing craft. In a nutshell, now that we know the government has recovered non-human technology.
Or at least we will, after we point James Webb Space Telescope at the White House.
It raises a natural question. If UFOs are real, what else? Suddenly, some of these other parts of the phenomenon that seemed unlikely are pulled into the realm of the possible.
And they may still be unlikely, but even if it's new science and not aliens, woo!
It's a very exciting time.
A quick reminder before we get into it. If you want to support what we do here, the best way is by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we got kind of an unusual episode today.
Okay. Cool.
To be perfectly honest with y'all, we debated about whether to record today. Part of the problem is that today is our normal recording day. Well, actually, it's not, because Chuck has a wet science thing going on this weekend.
That's
so
right.
we're actually recording a day early. But you don't care about that.
2
Point
days.
is, it's within range of normal for us to record. But there is a UAP hearing happening in Congress on the 13th, which is what, like Wednesday? Tuesday?
Like
Yeah, like
Nice.
It's coming right up.
Yeah.
And it seemed crazy to record a normal episode and then have this huge UFO thing happen and then not record for almost 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah,
So
right.
I just want to set everybody at ease. We are going to be covering the UAP hearing. Hopefully there's plenty to talk about.
Hopefully.
Depending on how exciting it is, we may record immediately, or we may let it wait until the weekend when it's a little more convenient for us to
Who
record.
knows?
But you will be getting a recording about the UAP hearing within a few days of it this week. But in the meantime, we thought, there's still a little bit of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And it always sucks when you're waiting for your podcast. It doesn't come out on the day it's scheduled. So we figured we'd do a little mini episode and jump in and still talk to y'all.
Yeah. So speaking of, is it still on?
It is still on. It's scheduled for November 13th, like I said. Yeah, I don't know. To the best of my knowledge, nothing has changed.
Yeah. Okay, great. So did we learn anything more about what they're going to talk about, or?
Yeah, the full title of the hearing, you're going to like this, is Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth.
Oh man, I love it. It sounds like how epic documentaries always have : exposing the truth.
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm guessing our good friend Burchett was involved in picking the name for this one.
Yeah, I can't wait until UAP2, Electric Boogaloo.
Right. Yeah. So there's a 1-paragraph summary of the hearing. It says, this hearing will broadly examine issues related to overclassification of information, along with a reluctance to declassify information where appropriate. It will attempt to shed further light on recent journalistic accounts concerning secret federal research programs on UAPs not disclosed to the American public.
Recent journalistic accounts, huh? That's got to be Immaculate Constellation story, right?
It's got to be, right? I mean, they're not saying it by name, but I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah, it makes sense. What about witnesses? I know we talked last time about not wanting to expose them, so they get scared off, but...
yeah, officially, no witnesses have been announced.
Great.
If you look at the little congressional call sheet, it says witnesses unannounced.
Yeah, that's great.
But
it's a success.
But as we talked about last time, both Tim Gallaudet, former Navy Rear Admiral, and Lou Elizondo, former director of ATIP, have said that they're going to be testifying.
Yeah, they can handle it.
Yeah, who knows if they will, but that's the plan. There was a rumor going around that Chris Mellon was going to be testifying as well. But he recently debunked that himself. He posted and said that he was intending to testify back when the hearing was scheduled in September. But when the hearing was rescheduled, it now conflicts with a long-planned family trip.
Ugh. a trip? Is it so much to ask that people not take care of themselves and their families in order to serve our constant need for consuming alien rumors? Jeez.
You're joking, but there was a considerable contingent on UFO Twitter who was like, "This is the biggest secret in human history. How dare he?" And I saw somebody else coming out with, basically along the lines of, "Guys, I can tell that you're not married. You don't cancel the long planned trip that you let your wife get involved with. Like, this trip was happening, come hell or high water."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Probably the more relevant question than the UAP hearing, which, like I said, to the best of my knowledge, is happening and nothing's really changed about it, is there was a presidential election.
Yeah. So what changed there? Like,
it's hard to say, right? Probably not much. Republicans seem to like UAP, so good to go.
Oh, okay. Great. See you next time. Good podcast.
I mean, we could talk a little bit more about it.
All right. So, yeah. Well, let's talk about the different branches. How does Trump impact disclosure or UAP?
This one is so hard to say. So, on the one hand, UFO Twitter is like, "Oh, Trump's the disclosure president. This is definitely going to happen." And it's true. Trump has talked about UFOs a lot more openly than other presidents. Now, part of that is because Trump has a tendency to want to sound like he knows what he's talking about, regardless of the topic. So if somebody asks him about UFOs, he's going to tend to go like, "Oh yeah, it's a real interesting topic. I know some stuff I can't say." But there are signs that Trump has been briefed, whether formally or informally. He gave that interview where he talked about meeting with pilots who talked about encountering unusual craft. Chris Sharp of the Liberation Times said he has it on firm sources that Trump has been briefed on the legacy crash retrieval program. But who knows? And the other weird thing about Trump is he's already been president. Like, I'm not sure what people think will be different the second time around, right? Ross Coulthart said that Trump feared for his life. Why would that be different the second time around? Like, he's president again, but is that going to change the way he behaves?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem, as with anything with Trump, is the dude's a fucking wild card. Like, who knows what he's going to do on anything, let alone the topic of UFOs, which I doubt is going to be very high on his radar.
Yeah. It's funny. I hadn't actually on my bingo card of reasons the world is going to end by 2030. This actually hadn't been part of it. But still time, I guess.
Who knows, man?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how about Senate?
I'm sorry. I was just laughing at you and I kind of dancing around saying anything about Trump. Our audience has gotten bigger now. And like, it's no secret. I'm from Portland. You can guess my political leanings pretty easily. Chuck's in Florida currently, but also a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pride flag in the background. I don't think it's any secret how we feel about, Trump back in power. But this isn't a political podcast, is what I wanted to say. But I was laughing about it in the shower this morning. I'm like, well, actually, we talk about politics all the time. What we are is a single issue political podcast. We care about one and only one thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that one thing, we're curious how that one thing is going to change. All the others,
exactly.
We're going to try and avoid having too much political.
So you asked about the Senate.
Yeah,
the Senate is complicated. Okay. There's been a flip in power there, right? The Democrats were in control of the Senate. Now the Republicans are going to be. But the people who were vocally advocating for UAP disclosure were all Democrats, right? Like Chuck Schumer submitted the UAP Disclosure Act, which has been shot down twice now. Senator Gillibrand has been heavily involved in getting AARO set up. I guess you could argue that maybe like Marco Rubio has more of a free hand now, but I don't know who in this scenario we imagined was holding Marco Rubio back. Like the Democrats weren't. So if the Democrats are the opposition party now, but they were the ones who were pro UFO, I don't know. I don't see how this changes. The Senate doesn't seem to be the one that was particularly pushing for UFO disclosure, with the exception of Chuck Schumer coming out of left field with the declassify everything bill.
Yeah. So I wonder if it'll be a bummer for the UAPDA, the disclose everything bill, but
technically it's still not dead until the NDA passes. There's always a possibility that someone's going to like airdrop it in at the last minute, but I think it's safe to say it's dead. The thing is I don't want anyone to come away from this with the impression that it was torpedoed by, say, Mitch McConnell. To the best of our knowledge, nobody torpedoed it. I'm not 100% sure that anyone was advocating for it. They put it in, but in the actual like meeting where they sat down to reconcile it, it's unclear whether anyone was standing up and saying, hey, we should vote on this. I think we probably ended up getting caught out by the presidential election, where all the people who might have advocated for it, say Schumer, felt like maybe now isn't the best time to do something weird. I don't know. Probably next year's the year, but does the change in the Senate affect that? It's hard to say. I don't think so, but who knows?
Do you mean to say you don't know the future?
I don't know the future. I've been practicing my remote viewing, but I'm not there yet.
All right. Well, then tell me about the future of the House.
Well, that's even harder because the House isn't settled yet. We still don't know who's going to take control.
Right.
Likely the Republicans, but it's anybody's game until it's over. But again, the Republicans are already in control of the House. So if the Republicans keep control, I don't see how that affects the power dynamics around advocating for disclosure. If the Democrats take control, again, I don't think the Democrats were the ones blocking it. Every time we heard about someone in the House, like blocking UAP stuff, it was a Republican. It was Mike Turner and the other guys. So it's really weird to be in the middle of a huge earth-shattering election. Like there's going to be broad changes across the government in the next 4 years. It's going to be a buck wild time. And it's hard for me to say that any of it is going to have any impact on the UAP topic. It seems like the people who care about it kind of already had the power they needed to care about it. And the stuff we're fighting is not elected officers of the government. It's, these like deep black secret programs who are misabusing an Eisenhower era secrecy memo. I just watched a YouTube about like, how is this going to affect NASA? And the answer was kind of the same. It's like, well, president doesn't actually set the budget. They make a recommendation and then Congress ignores it and does whatever they were going to do anyways. So, okay. Did maybe with Elon involved, but again, right? Like it,
that's
like Trump, he's a wild card. It's not like you can look at Elon and go, oh, he's definitely going to do X. Like, who knows? The only thing you can assume with those two is whatever they will do will serve their own interests. But what do they think their own interests are at the moment? Hard to say.
To be clear, he is definitely going to do X.com.
Well, yeah. All
right. I did have one more question, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did the UAP caucus members make it?
To the best of my knowledge, they're all still in there. So, cool. Good. It's like,
for this.
We've talked before about how most of the UAP caucus members are Republicans whose political leanings are fairly antithetical to my own beliefs. But again, this being a single issue political podcast, they're on the right side of that issue. And as far as I can tell, they're all still serving members of the House. So,
all right. Cool.
It's a complicated time, Chuck.
It is. It's an exciting but complicated time.
Let's talk about something less complicated.
Okay.
Let's talk about the rumors that the James Webb Space Telescope has detected alien life.
Sounds so much easier compared.
All right. So I have actually resisted bringing this up because, as Chuck is going to explain, it's a complex topic that doesn't have a satisfying answer to discuss. But in a nutshell, Chuck, I'd love for you to explain in words that I can understand what's going on with this. So there were kind of two rounds with this. First of all, back in September, the UFO internet kind of went on a rampage with news, with rumors, really, about the James Webb Space Telescope detecting a fast-moving, non-natural object moving towards Earth, and maybe it even changed directions. This seems to have all traced back to this guy named Professor Simon something. I forget his name. I'm sorry. My notes today are kind of a mess. But it's worth noting that this dude is not actually a professor of anything. This is just the name that he uses. He's like, like Dr. Bob, like he's professor, whatever. He claims he has sources inside the James Webb Space Telescope program who have leaked information to him. All of the claims seem to come back to this one guy who is maybe not super reliable.
Yeah.
But it seems plausible on the surface of it, right? Like we heard rumors from the moment the James Webb Space Telescope went up in UFO Twitter land that like this was going to be how they discovered the alien life that they already know about it. Like, hey, you guys, we got this great telescope up there. It turns out there's UFOs everywhere. You're never going to believe this. So help me out. Like, is it plausible that the James Webb Space Telescope could detect a massive UFO coming towards Earth or something like that?
Yeah. So probably not is the short answer. But let's talk about why, because it's actually interesting. So JWST, unlike Hubble, actually barely captures a tiny bit of visible light, which is weird to say, but it's entirely designed for infrared. So it captures it captures from 600 nanometer to 28,500 nanometer, which I know is that's meaningless to everyone. Totally meaningless. But visible light is from 400 to 700 nanometers. So there's like this sliver of orange and red that JWST can see of visible light. All it looks for really is like if it were local, it would be heat. It would be infrared. And so it works great for super duper distant galaxies that are very hot, but it doesn't work super well for things that aren't hot. So like if the fast moving non-natural object had like, I don't know, afterburners on, JWST might actually have a better chance of detecting it. But then we run into the second problem. Like, if you have your phone and you pinchy expand, so it's like 18x or something, and then you try and focus on something across the street because you're trying to see in your neighbor's windows or something. And it's just like all over the place. That's kind of how JWST is. Like, it is really built for super duper far away. And while it can detect things nearby, like it did some really cool photos of Jupiter, it's not easy. And I don't know the details of how they made that happen, but this is not what it's really built for. So a fairly nearby object moving really fast that is probably dim, probably cold, is very difficult for JWST to resolve or image in any way. So it's just not what it's built for. Hubble is actually much more possible, but I think it would also have trouble since it's down to like 1 or 2 gyros right now.
Let's talk about another part of this. So something you've mentioned to me before is all of the James Webb Space Telescope data goes public.
Eventually,
but it's got a delay on it, basically. It's, what is it, like a month or something? It's basically intended for the team that uses the James Webb Space Telescope to focus on something, they've got a period of time to publish their data and get credit for it before it kind of goes out to anybody to interpret.
Yeah. And it's closer to a year.
Okay.
From what I hear. But yeah, they need time to evaluate the data, publish their papers. One of the challenges we see happening is that when the details are published, or when the imagery is put up on the archive site, which is a really awesome site to go to, by the way, within days, someone on Reddit will have interpreted the data and created a false color image of whatever.
This is another thing that's worth pointing out, right? When we say imagery, in my head, I think a photo. It's not. Right. It's like a data stream that you have to interpret. When they say false color image, to my mind, that means they took a black and white photo and added color. That's not what's going on. What's happening is they've got, a pixel grid that represents various strengths of wavelengths at various places, and you have to decide how to represent that data. We can't see infrared, so what color do you make the infrared light in your photo?
Yeah, exactly. So so you're not wrong about a black and white photo. It is actually pretty much a black and white photo. They have a little lens that comes down in front of the imager, and it's got 18 different filters on it. And each filter represents a specific wavelength, and they're all named and everything. But what people will do with a false color image is they'll take the all right, we'll grab the 600 nanometer filter and we'll call that one blue for some reason. And then we'll do this filter. It's going to be green, and they'll just make a thing. But the problem with this is the photos that Reddit creates are often gorgeous, but they often do not do the math to calculate okay, what would the redshift be? What are the likely colors of these things? Because you can do that math, but it takes a lot of time and work.
Right.
And the people on Reddit want upvotes, not accuracy. So that's why they keep it behind doors for a while.
And it's worth pointing out that they're not necessarily wrong. It's just a different way of interpreting the data. You could argue that by closely tracking the redshift, you get a more accurate image. But even that more accurate image is fictional. You are representing colors where there are none, or more accurately, where you are representing wavelengths in spectrums that humans can see that don't exist in the spectrum that we took this photo.
Right. Well, and the imagery is so because it's redshifted, it could be the right color if you do the math.
Right.
But to your point though, sometimes that's not even what we care about. And
okay, so let's take a step back. So James Webb Space Telescope, very good at a lot of things: infrared light, long distance photography. Not so good at detecting fast-moving, cold objects that are close to us.
Correct.
It's just not what it's built to do. Yep. And if it were obvious enough for James Webb Space Telescope to see it, probably a lot of other satellites are also seeing it, because it would have to be pretty extreme to get to the point where James Webb could see it. And at that point, probably Hubble would be a better tool for it. So it's not that it's impossible that some object is coming towards Earth and has been detected, and because of this delay in releasing the data to the public, that it is known in the scientific community before it hits the public. But what we end up with is perfect fertile soil for a conspiracy theory of, we know that they're hiding data from us. We know that it could have seen it. So you're saying it's possible, Sure. Technically, this could happen. It's not likely for all of these reasons.
Yeah, but there are things JWST could look at, right?
Right. So let's talk about the other rumor regarding James Webb Space Telescope, which is a little older, but has been a little more persistent. One of the things that James Webb does do is analyze the atmosphere of exoplanets, which you can do by looking at wavelengths in ways that I don't understand. But basically, they can say, oh, this exoplanet has a lot of hydrogen or whatever, and we can infer things about that. Ross Coulthart has raised rumors that the James Webb Space Telescope has detected signs of extraterrestrial life, such as chemicals in the atmosphere of exoplanets that are only produced by living things. Ross said, quote, "That is one thing the government of the US is already aware of and sitting on. At least that's what I've been told." Now, technically, this does fit into the realm of what James Webb could detect. So what do you think about this kind of rumor?
So 100% NASA actually published this and did their like full write-up. Like when they have really cool news, they produce these like infographics that are gorgeous. And they did that for this. So there's a planet K2-18b.
Of course, K2-18b.
Yep. It's a very interesting planet. It's kind of it's smaller. It's larger than Earth, but smaller than Saturn. Smaller than Neptune. Yeah, smaller than Neptune. And it's in the Goldilocks zone. So like it could actually have liquid water there, which is interesting. And when they did the spectrum analysis, they did find some evidence of dimethyl sulfide, which is
they find that on Venus?
On Venus, yeah. So, and it's equally exciting because it's a kind of biomarker that seems to only happen from like marine animals. But NASA published a statement from Niku Madhudsudan. I don't know how I did on that. Astronomer from University of Cambridge, and the lead author of the paper. He said that the inference of DMS is less robust and requires further verification. So Niku is going to try and get more time on James Webb and get a better spectra for that exoplanet, but we don't know how long until then. And until then, we don't really have confidence.
So let's talk about this a little more. So first of all, James Webb Space Telescope perhaps detected dimethyl sulfate in the atmosphere of this exoplanet. That needs to be verified. Right. If it is verified, that possibly tells us that there is some form of life that is breathing, excreting, whatever, producing dimethyl sulfate. Based on our sample size of one, the Earth, we believe this is not a naturally occurring gas. You wouldn't find this in the atmosphere normally. But sample size of one, that's dangerous assumption. And case in point, we have detected this multiple times on Venus. We're relatively confident there's no life on Venus. Yeah. So that calls the whole assumption into question, right?
Yeah, to some degree. The challenge to that is, well, where would it go? Maybe there was life on Venus before it became a hellscape.
Right. Or maybe there's some extremophile bacteria that lives in the Venusian atmosphere that outputs it in a way we're continually discovering things. I watched a video online recently talking about how they recently found life in bedrock. Like they were digging down into the earth and like in the cracks between rocks, there's like life that lives there. Like we are continually having to take the window of what we think is a place where life could happen and extending it outwards to an absurd degree.
Yeah,
but
totally.
What does life mean in this case is not quite like extraterrestrial intelligence. It's like bacteria. So what I'm hearing you say is it is entirely plausible that James Webb Space Telescope has detected signs of extraterrestrial life in the atmosphere externally, but that needs to be verified. And what does life mean in this case is a big abstract question, because all we're really saying is we see a chemical in that atmosphere and we don't know how it got there.
Yeah. One of the things that you probably wouldn't initially think about is that, like, why don't they just point James Webb back at that planet, right? And get that other reading
out like years in advance.
It's not even that. That is not the problem. If there was a compelling case, James Webb would shift the schedule. However, the only time you can do this kind of imaging is when that planet transits in front of its star.
Oh, right, because it affects the spectra of the star.
Exactly. And so, exactly, it takes out sections of the spectrum that's coming from the star. Like a star should be a kind of an even spectrum, right? But when a planet goes in front of it, just when it transits, but the planet isn't yet in front of it, you'll get this little dip of like just the atmosphere.
We should do an episode at some point about the history of discovering exoplanets, because it's fascinating how abstract this science is. Like until very recently, exoplanets were a theory.
Yeah.
We think they should exist. The math says they should exist, but how do we verify that? They are too far away to see. Yeah. So you have to infer their existence by, the light from this star dimmed by 1% at a regular interval. That implies there's something orbiting it that is crossing the plane. But that means we have to be looking at that star on its orbital plane, which is not the case for every star out there. And then what else could account for the dimming of the star? Maybe there's something else. So it was a long time before we even settled on that. And then we get to this weird thing of the star blocks the light. That's something I can wrap my head around, right? The light from the star dims when something goes in front of it. The idea that I can then use that to infer from the change in the wavelength from the star what the atmospheric composition of that planet is, the size, the mass, the distance from the planet, all of that stuff just from this thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers.
It's bonkers. Yeah. It is. It really is. If you ever want to play with it a little bit, one of the things you can do is if you have a prism and you just, or like a rainbow maker, right? Throw that in the sunlight. And then grab something that's like thin, maybe like a fruit roll up or something. I know that's a weird thing to say, but put that in front of the light coming into the prism. Put that in front of the prism, and you'll see red get cut out, but the other colors will still come through. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Because the atmosphere is in front of the sun, and so it's filtering out certain things.
Man, this stuff is so wild.
Also, I wanted to say one other thing. The mass thing. We actually, there was a spot before the light dimming. We that's very recent. We used to only do it based on the wobble of the star.
Oh yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. Anyways. Also there's a exo moon. The YouTuber Cool Worlds just got time on JWST and posted that they're trying to detect an exo moon of an exoplanet. And
so weird.
It's so cool. So he's not going to give us results for about a year, but and he's not going to post status updates, but he just posted like, oh my God, I have time on JWST and it's happening right now. And I'm very excited. And he was like crying, and it was very cool. I would be the same way.
So I'm sorry to rain on anybody's parade who's hoping that James Webb Space Telescope is going to tell us that there's a UFO that's going to arrive in 2027.
Yeah.
Maybe, but probably not. If we're going to get any kind of announcement from James Webb Space Telescope, it's probably going to be the kind of relatively sedate announcement that we expect from NASA of, we found life, big asterisks.
Yeah.
So this is about all we've got for this episode. Like I said, we will be back within a few days of the hearing. Depending on how exciting the hearing is, we may record very quickly. If it's kind of more of the same, we may wait till the weekend. We'll see. But I wanted to end with two bits of media recommendation. First of all, if you've been listening for a while, you've heard us talk about legendary Nevada UFO journalist George Knapp repeatedly. He has a new series up on Netflix called Investigation Alien. It literally dropped today, so I have not watched it, but UFO Reddit is very excited about the first few episodes. They said, on the whole, this seems like a good show. George Knapp is a great guy. He's been investigating this longer than a lot of us have been alive. He knows freaking everything, and this is him coming in and putting his stamp on it the way that Elizondo and others have in the past. So that's definitely on my watch list.
Yeah,
the other one is an anime.
Okay, sure.
Now, hear me out.
Okay.
This anime is called Dawn to Dawn. It's so freaking weird, man. It is about an otaku kid, this like nerd, who,
I'm familiar.
Big glasses, bad haircut, no friends, and all he does is read UFO magazines at school.
Okay.
And one day, a cute girl is having a bad day because her boyfriend dumped her. And she sees some bullies picking on him, and she sits down next to him to kind of like dare the bullies to do anything. And like, this kid is so taken with it, he runs after her and starts talking to her. And he mentions UFOs, and she's like, "Oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff." And he's like, "But it's true." And it is very clear that someone on the writing team is a UFO fanatic, because he hits all the points. He's like, the U.S. government has been investigating their secret crash retrievals, and like he talks about all the big cases and everything. Like it's like it's accurate to what we talk about in the UFO world. So it's very funny to hear this kid talking and like, yeah, that's dead on. That's exactly the kind of thing you say. But he's trying to convince her that UFOs are real. She's like, that shit isn't true. But then it comes out that she believes in ghosts and psychics. And he's like, that shit isn't true. How can you believe that, but not UFOs? So they dare each other. She goes to a hotspot for UFO activities, and he goes to like a haunted building, and they both encounter the other thing. So like, she believes in ghosts but has never seen one. He believes in UFOs but has never seen one. She goes to the UFO hotspot and gets abducted. He goes to the haunted spot and meets a ghost. Bizarre shit happens. Like all anime, it's kind of weirdly fan servicey. Like the girl's clothes are constantly getting taken off, but
of course,
she is an absolute ass kicker, and they end up in this weird situation where he is possessed by a ghost and she's using psychic powers that were unlocked by the aliens. It's buck wild, man. And like I said, whenever they talk about UFOs, it's very clear like someone in the show knows what they're talking about.
That's hilarious. Yeah. If you want more recommendations like this, the Discord is just stuffed. Like, there's a recommendations channel, and there's so much good stuff in there. So
true story.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on It's a Very Exciting Time. You can find show notes and more on our website, veryexcitingtime.com, as well as links to our Discord and social media accounts.
And you can feel free to email us at scott.or chuck@veryexcitingtime.com. And if you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime.
And Chuck, as always, my wife thanks you for listening to me talk about UFOs so she doesn't have to.